it's Kelly here, and I am back with another Casing Genius video. And this week's Casing Genius is Vicki from All I Do Is Stamp, and we are going to be using the Best Buds stamp set from Paper Smooches. Vicki had some really beautiful florals and watercolors in her first two cards, and I really wanted to, I mean, if you've been here before, I love flowers. So we're doing a one-layer panel. I stamped down this banner and I wanted it to go over the top of these flowers in the jar. So when you're doing a one-layer panel, whatever you want to be in the foreground, you have to stamp first. So I just kind of guesstimated where that banner was going to go, and now I'm trying to figure out the placement of my jar. I cut my paper to be, it's watercolor paper, it's Canson. I cut it to be quite a bit bigger than the final piece is going to be. One, so I could tape it down. Two, so that it wasn't so important where I stamped that banner. And then I wanted the bouquet arrangement to be a little bit fuller on the left-hand side. So they have a rose in the set that Kim has drawn, which is super cute. So I wanted to throw that in there, and I'm just trying to figure out where exactly I'm going to put it. So once I have that done, I'll go ahead and remove my masks, and then this is going to be our focal point for the card. I tape that down using some just painter's tape, and I'm going to use my Zig clean color markers. I have the 36 set, and I'm just literally going to scribble it on the paper. Like that's, I have the lightest blue, and I'm going to outline the whole image because I was lazy and I didn't mask it. So once that's all outlined, I'm just going to take the marker, and it is sped up just a smidge, but I'm just scribbling it all over the place because it doesn't matter. Once we add water, it's going to mix beautifully and do its own thing. So I'm kind of working with the idea of threes with all these blues. So I'm just picking three areas, and you'll see me kind of like hesitate here. Where do I want to put it? So, and that's just so you get a good color variation. And then the darkest one is this really deep navy, which I think is super pretty. So here I just have clean clear water, and these markers drag a lot. Like they leave a lot of pigment on your marker, and I am coloring right over my jar because the jar would be transparent, so you'd be able to see the background through it. I am, however, not going right up to the edge of my flowers or banner or whatever it is. I'm leaving a little bit of a gap because I did not mask. So what I'm going to end up doing is going in with and that's me adding more water, making sure it stays wet because I know I want to add some shimmer. But here I'm going with the number 2 round brush, and it's pretty wet, and I'm bringing that pigment to the edge, but I'm doing it with a finer tip. I didn't want to have to do the whole background with this little teeny tiny tip. Don't mind my enormous head there. It's when you're trying to get up to those edges, you kind of get your head down there so you can see what you're doing. So I apologize, but I needed to do it so the card wouldn't be ugly. Sorry about it. But anyway, so once I bring that right up to all of the edges for everything, then I'm going to go ahead, and I wanted to add some shimmer. Vicki on her first card, she has a beautiful like blue-green turquoise background, and on the leaves she used, I'm not sure what she used, but it's something that's like metallic, shimmery, like super pretty. So I wanted to make sure that there was still a good amount of moisture on all of my background so that I could easily add it. I went the Perfect Pearls route, and I am using the Perfect Pearls color. So I'm just scooping some down into my Ranger craft mat and then adding water so that I can just drop it in various places. And this stuff is so shiny. It's absolutely beautiful. I'm not sorry that I used it because I think it's gorgeous, but it did make my coloring a little bit difficult because of the shine. It was hard for me to see where my shading was going down when I was doing the background. So I'm going back in with my zigs again because I wanted Vicki, whenever I look at her cards, they're just these beautiful, vibrant colors. And I didn't feel like the background as is was really doing her justice. So I wanted to go ahead and do another layer. I didn't add them all over, and I didn't add water all over again. I just kind of spread it around, and this will give you, with your watercolors, like some hard and soft edges, so your background is not all just you know, one layer blah. It'll look like it's multiple layers. And like I said, you'll have those hard and soft edges, which are, you know, super pretty in watercolor. So once I got that done, I went ahead and heat set it again. And, you know, that's just because I'm impatient. I mean, you certainly could, you know, walk away from this for, you know, 15, 20 minutes and it would be dry by the time you came back, depending upon how much water you used on your background. Mine certainly would have been dry by then. But when I sit down to craft, I sit down to craft. So I just wanted to get it done. So I hit it with my heat tool. And then there you can see the metallic. I mean, it's totally beautiful. And here I'm doing a Christina Warner. So this mini mister, that mister is enormous. It's anything but mini. Anyway, the water mister, I'm just spraying it in my hand and dropping some bigger droplets onto the background. And again, this is just going to create more variation. So I'm going to blot that up and you can see how pretty those little spatters are. Vicki had them on her third card, those water splatters, and I love them. So here, you would be able to see the background through the glass jar, but I wanted it to be a little bit lighter. I wanted it to kind of stand out from the background. And later on, when I start my Copic coloring, I'll be doing some shading on the jar as well to kind of help it stand out. But in the meantime, I wanted to pull up some of that color. So I just put clean, clear water on top and then blotted it up. I picked pinks and oranges, a little bit of red, and some yellows. In Vicki's second card, she had these beautiful flowers. They were just absolutely gorgeous with like neon green and pinks and oranges, and I love them. I love pink and orange together, so I decided that's the route that I was going to go. I have seen before comments left on YouTube when they're talking about like who are these people you're talking about? On my blog, if you're a follower of my blog, I do a series called Casing Genius. And casing something it's basically an abbreviation for copy and steal everything. And the purpose of it is so that I can showcase other crafters that I think are super talented. So when you hear me talking about these other people, it's because I'm showcasing their work on my blog, and this is my take on their work, which I am completely honored to be showing. You know, they're wonderful crafters, wonderful people, super talented, and I'm glad that they let me be a part of showing off what they can do. So anyway, if you're ever wondering what that's about, that is, and you know, you can head over to the blog and read all about it. There's a tons of people to get lots of inspiration from. How about that? Tons of people to get lots of inspiration from. So anyway, I left in all the pink flowers because all of the pink flowers were different. If you watched my videos before, you know I start with my lightest color. I use a light hand in the tip of the marker to do feathering techniques mostly. For this rose, I didn't really do too much feathering because the area was so small and I was trying to conserve, you know, my little bit of highlight. But I wanted to show you each individual flower. Most of them, like the larger ones up top, are the same. I didn't show you like that orange one that I did. Oranges for me are very difficult to shade. I don't know if it's my colors that I have purchased. I've looked online to see what other people are using, and I haven't really found a good way to shade orange. I wanted these particular oranges to be very, very bright, so I decided to shade them as my darkest color with a red. You can't tell it's a red. And that's the wonderful thing about Copics. You know, they blend and move together really well. So here, if for this flower, my lightest color is actually a yellow and my darkest color is a red, but it doesn't matter because that flower looks orange. And that was the purpose, is for it to look orange. So don't be afraid to kind of mix your color families. If you're not getting good shading with what you have in a particular color family. You know, most of the oranges I have are super bright and I haven't found a really, you know, good one that's going to give me good depth. So, you know, sometimes I use E's, sometimes I use reds. It just depends on the look that I'm going for. And I didn't feel like an E in this particular card would give me that super bright orange. So that's why I went with the red. And then I decided to bring in a couple of reds, just because I needed to fill those flowers with something. I didn't want it just to be completely pink and orange. I felt like it would have been too much. So I felt red was a complementary color. So that's what I decided to bring in. Here you can see they're the same color and they're laying on top of each other. So you'll see that furthest right petal on the smaller flower here. I'm being very careful to make sure I leave the edge of that light. And it's just to help it be distinguished from that other larger flower, since they are the same exact color and they're going to be laying right on top of each other. It's just, those little things, those little details that make a difference so that everything doesn't look just like one big blob on your card. Nobody wants a blobby card, though. Dawn from W+9 says that you can turn any blob into a flower. So maybe you do want blobs on your card that you can turn into something pretty. I can't turn blobs into anything pretty. I've tried. So from here, I wanted to just fill in those colors and, or fill in those centers, and yellow's always good for that. The only one I actually went over twice was the one in the top left where it was the largest. All the rest of them, because they're so tiny, blended super easy, so I didn't even need to go back over them. And then I picked my favorite color combination for greens, which is YG01, 03, 17, and 67. And Vicki had used some like beautiful neon greens in 2 of her cards, so I really wanted to keep that neon intact. And I actually only did the leaves one time. I only went over them once because I really liked the kind of streakiness I was getting from the darkest color. Here I'm doing the shading on the jar. I'm going in with C's. They're cool grays, so they're more blue toned, so they're going to play very nicely with that blue background. And I'm only adding shading to just the edges and then the inset part of the lid. And then with my darkest color, I'm barely doing any feathering whatsoever, just because you're just trying to give it a little bit of shape to make it stand out from the background. For the banner, again, you want to give it just a little bit of shape. I'm using the same C colors, and the C5 I'm actually only going to use just in the darkest areas. So the part of the scroll that's bent back, I'm just going to do one quick line, and that's it. It doesn't need to be a lot. Like, don't feel like you have to overdo it. A little bit of something will get you some dimension, especially when it comes to coloring anything white. Like, you would be very light-handed. Here I wanted it to have a little bit of ground, so I used, I went C7. That's the one I added. I added some C7, and then I used that same C7 marker to give some shadows to there. And I went C7, C5, and C3. I'm not gonna, this is me finishing up with the C3. I'm not gonna make you watch the whole thing because this is already a really long video because of the watercoloring and the Copics. And I hate to leave anything out because I know how it is to watch something and you like don't know how somebody got from point A to point B, and but not that I want you to have to sit here for 20 minutes either. So it's like, I wish I was faster, but I'm not. So it is what it is. I'm using my white gel pen just to add a little bit of highlights onto the jar, and then I added some dots into the center of the flowers just because they kind of felt a bit naked. They felt like they needed a little something. So, and then I also added some white highlights to some of the petals on the flowers just for a little bit of added interest. I outline everything, you know this, and especially when using that shimmer, because it covers up your lines, it's a good idea to go back in. So I just, outline everything with a Copic multi-liner or journaling pen. The sentiments that are included in this set kind of snuggle right into that banner. They're shaped perfectly for it. So this one I had never used before, so I stamped it off on a scrap piece first before I actually stamped it onto my project. If you're, if it's the first time you're using a stamp, definitely stamp it off one time before you just dive right in there because it can mess it up. So I wanted, Vicki's first card had a lot of layers, and I thought it was super pretty, so I wanted to use it as my layout. I centered a black piece on my card base, and this card base is a little smaller. It's 4 by 5 1/4. And then I added a piece of neon green, kind of like tilted to the right, and then I'll add my watercolor panel kind of tilted to the left, just so it has multiple layers and, little pops of color. And then that's pretty much the card. I really wanted to add some sequins or some Winkostella or something, but that shimmer that's in the watercolor background was just so pretty and so strong. It probably didn't need anything else, and I didn't want to overdo it. I didn't want to take away from, the kind of simplicity that was that one layer panel. So that is the card for today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I will see you later. Bye.